The engine of my old Peterbilt hummed with its usual lulling drone. 18 wheels devoured mile after mile of Interstate 64, carrying me deeper into the Appalachians, West Virginia. They call it the Mountain State for a reason. The road twisted like a snake, now climbing another ridge that offered a view of valleys drowning in fog, then diving into damp, dark hollows where ancient trees closed in overhead, turning day into dusk. I was hauling a perishable cargo, medical supplies for a clinic in Charleston. Being late wasn't an option. Every hour counted, which meant no extra stops, just coffee and fuel. I love this job for its honesty. It's you, your rig, and the road. No bosses breathing down your neck, no office politics, just the ribbon of asphalt, the changing landscapes, and the voices on the CB radio, the only beacon of civilization in this vast wilderness. But this time, the voices were different. It wasn't the usual chatter about Smokey Bear on the prowl, cheap gas, or the too-strong coffee at the last diner. Something else was hanging in the airwaves. "Saw him again last night," a voice crackled through the static. "Over the river near Point Pleasant. Big sucker, like a man, but with wings." "Oh, come on, old-timer, not those stories again," a reply that I could almost feel his smirk. "Laugh all you want, smart guy. Go ask the folks who were on the Silver Bridge back in '67. They would have laughed too." The mention of the Silver Bridge silenced even the skeptic. Everyone knows about that tragedy. The bridge connected West Virginia and Ohio collapsed during rush hour, plunging dozens of cars and 46 people into the Ohio River. And right before it happened, legend says people saw him, the Mothman. I didn't exactly believe in those tall tales. 20 years behind the wheel, I had heard it all. Ghost trucks, women in white hitchhiking on the roadside, cursed stretches of highway where brakes fail. For every story, the seasoned trucker has an explanation. Fatigue, whiskey, a trick of the light and shadows. But here, in West Virginia, the legend of the Mothman felt different. It had seeped into the very soil, into the mist clinging to the mountaintops, and into the creek into the old trees, turning day into dusk. I was hauling a perishable cargo, medical supplies for a clinic in Charleston. Being late wasn't an option. Every hour counted, which meant no extra stops, just coffee and fuel. But now, as dusk thickened and the first drops of rain began to drum against the windshield, the old man's words echoed in my head with growing insistence. The CB crackled to life again. This time, the voice was agitated, almost breaking. Right over the words. "It's not a bird. I'm telling you, it's him. The eyes. By God, those eyes. I'm pulling over. To hell with it." The airwaves filled with static. I keyed the mic. "Can anyone confirm? What you got, buddy?" Silence. No one answered. Only the steady hum of my diesel and the rising sound of the rain. The feeling of unease, which had just been a faint background noise, began to grow, twisting into a cold knot in my stomach. I stared at the road ahead, at the wall of trees on either side, and it started to feel like something was moving in the deep shadows between the trunks. Something huge, dark, and utterly alien to this world.
The sky had turned completely black, not from the night, but from the clouds. I hadn't seen clouds so low, heavy, and lead-colored in a long time. They hung over the mountains like the belly of a giant beast, poised to unleash their fury upon the earth. The rain turned into a downpour. The wipers could barely keep up, smearing sheets of water across the windshield. and the road transformed into a black, gleaming mirror, reflecting my headlights and the rare flashes of lightning. The radio was silent. That was the worst part. Usually the airwaves never quiet down for a minute. There's always someone chatting, telling jokes, complaining about life. Now a dead, oppressive silence reigned, broken only by the dry crackle of static. It was as if everyone else on this road had either vanished at once or gone into hiding, afraid to give away their presence. As if an unseen predator was on the hunt, and all its prey had frozen in terror. I tried to push the dark thoughts away, focusing on the road, the cargo, the clinic, responsibility. I repeated these words like a mantra, sinking deeper into my seat and gripping the wheel tighter. It's just bad weather, just an overactive imagination fueled by spooky stories, nothing more. But my heart was pounding somewhere in my throat, and my palms were sweating despite the AC. A flash of lightning lit up the entire scene for a moment, snatching a landscape from the darkness that sent a shiver down my spine. On the ridge of a nearby hill, clearly silhouetted against the stormy sky, stood a figure. It was enormous, humanoid, but with one monstrous difference. Folded behind its back were two gigantic wings, like those of a bat. It lasted for a fraction of a second. The next clap of thunder shook the cab, and when my eyes focused on the hill again, there was nothing there. I slammed on the brakes. The trailer swerved, and the heavy truck nearly went into a skid on the slippery asphalt. I clutched the wheel, straightening the rig, my heart hammering against my ribs. What was that? A tree? A strange rock formation? A trick of the eye? I sat there for several minutes, listening to the roar of the rain, trying to convince myself I had imagined it. Fatigue. My eyes were blurry from hours of strain. It happens. Of course it happens. I took a breath, shifted into gear again, and slowly pulled away, trying not to look toward that cursed hill. But now I knew. Or I was afraid I knew. That thing they were talking about on the radio, that monster from the newspaper clipping, it was here. And it knew I was here. The legend says he is a harbinger of disaster. If you see him, stop. Find shelter. Don't tempt fate. The old cashier's word echoed in my ears again and again. But what was I supposed to do? Abandon a truck with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of medicine on the side of the road? Just because I thought I saw a shadow on a hill? No, that would be insane. I'm a trucker, not a ghost hunter. My job is to get the cargo from point A to point B, no matter what. I pressed the accelerator. The engine roared in protest, and the 18-wheeler, my steel home, and my fortress surged forward, straight into the jaws of the storm. I tried to look only at the dividing line, at that small island of order in the middle of the raging chaos. But now I kept casting sidelong glances at the sky. And in every dark cloud, in every bizarre shadow cast by the trees and the flashes of lightning, I saw the same figure, a figure with wings. It was then I realized that this wasn't just fear. It was an intrigue, grim and fascinating. Why me? Why was this thing revealing itself to me? Was it really a warning or something else? And the biggest question, the one that made my blood run cold, what disaster was it foretelling? The one waiting for me up ahead on this rain-drenched, God-forsaken road?
The storm grew stronger with every mile. The wind battered the side of the trailer with such force that I had to constantly correct the steering to keep the truck in its lane. Small branches and leaves flew at the windshield like shrapnel. The Appalachian mountains seemed to have come alive, turning against me, the sole violator of their grim peace. The loneliness inside a truck cab during a storm like this is a unique feeling. You're separated from the world by a thin layer of glass and metal, yet you're at the very epicenter of it. The engine, once calming, now seemed too loud, and the sounds from outside too close. I turned on the AM radio just to hear a human voice, but all I could catch was hiss and fragments of some mournful melody, like from a long-forgotten record. It only heightened the sense of isolation and anxiety. I kept glancing at the rearview mirrors, at first just out of habit, of professional necessity, but then my glances became more frequent, more nervous. It started to feel like I was seeing something more than just spray and the swirling, watery mist behind me in the light of my marker lamps. A vague, dark shape that kept its distance, neither falling behind nor getting closer. Was it flying? Was it just an optical illusion, a play of light on the wet asphalt? I shook my head, rubbed my eyes. Get a grip, man, I said to myself out loud. Just deliver the cargo. But it was in that moment that it happened. I glanced at the right-hand mirror again, and for a split second, in its blurry reflection, I saw them. 2 red lights. As bright as glowing coals, they burned in the heart of the darkness right behind my trailer. They weren't like headlights or brake lights. This light was alive, malevolent, and I was sure of it. It was looking straight at me. I yelled and instinctively stomped on the gas pedal. The truck lurched forward. I didn't take my eyes off the mirror, but the lights vanished as suddenly as they had appeared. Only the gloom and the torrents of rain remained. Panic rose in my throat like a sticky wave. This wasn't my imagination. It wasn't fatigue. The thing that was following me was real. The warnings, he's after you, his appearance means you must stop, no longer sounded like folklore, but like a direct order that I had to find. I began frantically thinking about what to do. Stop? Where? In the middle of this storm on a narrow mountain road, with a rock face on one side and a cliff hidden by a curtain of rain on the other? That was suicide. Keep driving? But to where? Towards the very disaster they were trying to warn me about? I passed an exit for a small rest area enclosed by an old wooden fence. There wasn't a single vehicle there. The lamp above it flickered, about to go out. For a moment, I hesitated. Was this a sign? Should I pull over and wait it out? But the thought of the cargo, of the people waiting for these medicines, took over again. I couldn't let them down. I couldn't let some night monster, even if it was real, ruin my run. Gritting my teeth, I drove past the exit, and in that same second, a horrifying, piercing scream erupted from the CB radio, like a woman at agony. It was so loud it made my ears ring, almost dropped the wheel. The scream cut off, replaced by a voice, low, distorted, as if coming from beyond the grave. The bridge. Don't. The silver bridge. And then static again. A cold sweat broke out on my skin. The silver bridge. It was long gone, replaced by a new one. What did that mean? A hallucination? Radio interference? Or had the warning become more specific? I remembered the story. The bridge had collapsed on December 15th. I glanced at the calendar on my dashboard. It was deep into the night of the 14th. In less than 24 hours, it would be the anniversary of that terrible tragedy. The feeling of fear morphed into an almost primal terror. This creature wasn't just following me, it was talking to me, using the only means available to it, an old CB radio. And its message was clear. But I had already made my choice. I had passed the rest area, ignored the red eyes in the mirror, ignored the scream from the speakers. There was no turning back now. All that was left was to drive forward and hope that legends are just legends.
The road began a steep descent, after which I knew from the map there should be a bridge over the Canoma River. Not the Silver Bridge, but a new, modern one. But after what I'd heard on the radio, the mere word bridge sent a shiver through me. The downpour reached its peak. It wasn't just rain anymore, but a solid wall of water. It felt as if the sky had cracked open and dumped all its contents onto the earth. Visibility dropped to almost zero. The headlights only snatched a few meters of churning asphalt from the darkness ahead. Suddenly, the engine sputtered once, twice, and died. The silence that followed the steady drone of the diesel was deafening. All that remained was the sound of the storm outside. The truck, having lost power, began to roll slowly down the incline. I slammed my fist on the dashboard, swore, and turned the key in the ignition again and again. The starter clicked, but the engine didn't respond. The electronics were working, the headlights were on, the gauges were lit, so it wasn't the battery. A fuel line issue? Here? Now? Impossible. I had refueled and checked the truck right before the trip. In a panic, I stumped on the brakes, but due to the steep slope and the film of water on the road, the heavy machine didn't stop, only slowed its slide. I was sliding downhill towards the bridge in complete silence, as if in a hearse. And it was in that moment that I saw him again. He wasn't standing on a hill or flying behind me. He was right on the road ahead, at the bottom of the descent. His figure was barely visible through the curtain of rain, but I recognized it. A huge dark silhouette, taller and whiter than my truck, and two red eyes burning like warning lights looked directly at me. They were the only point of light and meaning in this chaos. He was standing in my way, blocking the road. A final warning. "Get out of the way!" I screamed, though I knew he couldn't hear me. I was pushing the brake pedal to the floor, the wheels locked up, and the truck went into a skid. The trailer began to fishtail. I desperately spun the wheel, trying to straighten the rig, but it was useless. I was being dragged right towards him. The distance was closing 50 yards, 40, 30. Now I could see him more clearly. He was about 8, maybe 10 feet tall. He had no arms or head in the conventional sense, just a massive dark body covered in something like fur or feathers, and gigantic wings folded behind his back. And the eyes, those eyes were mesmerizing. There was no malice in them. There was an ancient sorrow and an insistence. He wasn't going to attack. He just stood there, an immovable obstacle like fate itself. And in the last moment, when the collision seemed inevitable, fear gave way to a strange kind of enlightenment. I understood. This whole time, this whole journey, he wasn't trying to scare me or harm me. He was trying to save me. I yanked the wheel hard to the right, aiming the truck towards the rock face. Better to wreck the truck against the stone than to face the inevitability he represented, or whatever awaited me beyond him. The front tire hit a rock ledge with a scream of protest. The truck tilted, and I was thrown against the door. My ears rang from the impact. For a moment, everything blurred. Through the windshield, which was now spider-webbed with cracks, I saw the Mothman slowly spread his enormous, tattered wings, rise vertically into the air without a single flap, and dissolve into the stormy sky. And then I heard the sound. A low, drawn-out, scraping groan that seemed to come from beneath the earth itself. It grew, turning into a deafening crack of tearing metal and the thunder of falling rock. A sound I will never forget. The sound of the end of the world. The sound of a collapsing bridge.
I don't know how long I sat in the wrecked cab, listening to the subsiding storm and the echo of that terrible catastrophe. Maybe an hour, maybe the whole night. Time had lost all meaning. The world had shrunk to the space of my driver's seat, the ache in my shoulder from the impact, and the beat of my own heart, which was slowly returning to a normal rhythm. The rain gradually subsided, replaced by a fine mist, and then stopped altogether. In the east,
The gray, washed-clean sky began to lighten. When dawn broke, I stumbled out of the cab. The air was cold and smelled of wet earth, ozone, and something else. Dust. Rock dust. My truck was nosed into the cliffside, the front wheel twisted at an unnatural angle, the hood and windshield webbed with cracks. But overall, it was alive, and I was alive. I took a few steps forward, to the edge of where the road abruptly ended, and I saw it. The bridge was gone. In its place was a gaping abyss, at the bottom of which, in the murky waters of the swollen Kanawha River, I could see twisted trusses, fragments of concrete, and something else. Something that used to be a road with cars on it. A huge section of the bridge from the other side had simply vanished, as if sliced away by a giant knife, and the part that began on my side had collapsed, unable to support its own weight. Later, the news would say the cause was a landslide that had undermined one of the support piers. The storm, middle fatigue, a tragic accident. They would find 1,000 rational explanations. But I knew the truth. I stood on the edge of the chasm I should have plunged into, and I understood that my life was saved not by chance, but by the intervention of something inexplicable. The creature that everyone considered a harbinger of doom had been, for me, a guardian angel. It didn't foretell disaster. It desperately tried to prevent it, to save at least one lost soul too stubborn to listen to the whispers of fate. My cargo was lost. The deadlines missed. The truck in need of serious repair. I was facing problems with the company, fines, inquiries. But looking at the yawning abyss, I realized how petty and unimportant all of that was. I could have become just another number on a list of casualties. Another spooky story for truckers. Instead, I was standing here, breathing in the fresh morning air. Many years have passed since then. I still drive a big rig, but something inside me changed forever. I no longer chase deadlines by pushing my limits. I've learned to listen to the road, the wind, the silence on the airwaves. Sometimes, driving through the back roads of West Virginia, I scan the sky or the shadows on the roadside, and there's no fear in my heart, only a strange, respectful gratitude. I never saw him again, but I know he's out there somewhere, flying in the thunderclouds above these ancient mountains, watching over lonely travelers. And if you ever find yourself on a dark road at night, and the world around you seems hostile, and your gut is screaming at you to stop, listen to it. Maybe it's not just fatigue or a trick of your imagination. Maybe two sad red eyes are watching over you. Maybe your Mothman is trying to save your life.